I'm Tim Janisewski, and welcome to our Lectio Continua. That is the Latin phrase for our continual, ongoing reading of the first Gospel of Matthew as we spotlight the good news. And in our last devotional reading, we saw that Jesus was speaking with the disciples of John the Baptist about fasting. And as Jesus is wrapping up his conversation with them, we pick up today's Lectio Continua. It has to do with the seventh and the eighth of these 10 mighty works of Jesus. Why do we put these two together? Well, it's because they are intertwined in Matthew's narrative for us. It has to do with the mighty work with the deceased, recently dead daughter of a synagogue ruler. And along the way, we encounter a woman who has had a discharge of blood for a full 12 years long. So we pick up today in chapter 9 with verse 18. While Jesus was saying these things to them, that is to the disciples of John the Baptist, behold, a ruler came and knelt before him, saying, "My daughter has just died, but come and lay your hands on her, and she will live again." And Jesus rose and followed him, with his disciples along. And behold, a woman who had suffered from a discharge of blood for 12 years came up from behind him and touched the fringe of his garment. For she said to herself, "If only I can touch his garment, I will be made well." And Jesus turned and seeing her said, "Take heart, daughter. Your faith has made you well." And instantly the woman was made well. And when Jesus came to the ruler's house and saw the flute players and the crowd making a commotion, he said, "Go away, for the girl is not dead, but sleeping." And they laughed at him. But when the crowd had been put outside, he went in and took her by the hand, and the girl arose. And the report of this went throughout the district. Well, as we look at these twin miracle stories, these twin mighty works of Jesus, let us simply recall the nature of faith that is being exercised and encouraged in chapters 8 and 9. We go all the way back to chapter 8, verse 2, when the leper comes to Jesus and says, "Lord, if you are willing, you are able to cleanse me. Lord, if you are willing, you are able to cleanse me." There are three components to this faith. First of all, Jesus is Lord. He is the one with the power and the authority, and we recognize it. Secondly, we recognize with the leper that Jesus must be willing. We do pray, "Jesus, not my will, but thy will be done in my life as it is in heaven." We always are willing to submit to the will of Jesus. And third, we develop an unshakable faith and conviction that Jesus is able no matter what the situation may be. And I think we find these three elements operative with this synagogue ruler. First of all, he is a ruler, but nevertheless, he comes and kneels before Jesus. Do not miss that funny or that interesting little detail that Matthew gives us. Rulers are usually people that other people come and kneel before, but we find this ruler humbly willing to bend his knee to Jesus Christ, recognizing that Jesus is the one with the greater rule in this situation. Secondly, he believes that Jesus is able. He knows that Jesus can raise her up if Jesus wishes to do so, but he includes the word if. If you will come, it's your will, not my will. If you do not come, she will not be raised, but if you do, she will. So you see these three elements and apply them to your own life over and over again. Real faith is submitting to Jesus as the one who is Lord of all circumstances. Real faith is knowing that Jesus always is able, and even able in the face in this situation of raising a deceased girl. And finally, real faith always submits to the will of Jesus. It does not force the will of Jesus. It does not coax Jesus. It does not try to twist his arm into getting what we want, but it is willing to submit to whatever Jesus wills. And note also that this faith always in Matthew is faith in Jesus. Sometimes we get sidetracked into thinking about faith in faith. You know, if I just have enough faith, then God will do it. That's faith in faith. But no, it's never a case of having the faith in faith that can name it and claim it and God must do it. It's always a faith in Jesus himself, his lordship, his will, and his willingness. Never lose sight of that kind of faith as you walk every day in Jesus Christ. Well, Jesus does want to do it. He does get up and rises and goes with his disciples. And as he comes to the synagogue ruler's house, he sees the flute players and the commotion of all the mourners. This was typical in first century Judaism. In fact, those who had financial means sometimes would hire professional mourners in order to enhance the commotion and the sense of loss and pain along with those who truly were mourning. And so Jesus steps into this situation. Perhaps there were professional mourners there. After all, this man is very well known and prominent. He is the ruler of the local synagogue. So we can imagine all that is going on here. And Jesus looks and says, the girl is sleeping. Of course, he knows that she is dead, but he says she's sleeping, she's not dead. And the response that comes is to laugh at Jesus. The Greek word here means something like, laugh in your face. We laugh in your face, Jesus. We mock you. We scorn you. What a ridiculous thing. You should be ridiculed for suggesting to this ruler that his little girl is not dead, but simply is sleeping. So we see a contrast here, don't we? The faith of the synagogue ruler who brings Jesus and continues with Jesus in spite of the derision, and the lack of faith expressed by the crowds of mourners. And so Jesus goes in and unceremoniously, without great pomp and circumstance, takes the girl's hand and raises her up from the dead. I think it's just an interesting side note, too, that Matthew records this without any kind of flourish or fanfare. You could have gone on for a whole chapter about headline, read all about it. Jesus did this, every detail. No, it's understated once again. Jesus is the dead raiser, and he comes to the house of this ruler and simply raises this little girl. In theology, you know, to make an application here, there's something known as prolepsis. Prolepsis means that one event anticipates another event. It's kind of like prophecy. The words of the prophet anticipate something that will happen in the future. Sometimes an event at one point anticipates a greater event that will come out in the future. And I think we have here a little bit of a prolepsis. Jesus, the dead raiser, raises this little girl from her deathbed. And as he does so, we know that Jesus is going to take his own journey. And that journey will lead him to Jerusalem during the Passover, AD 30, where he will be indeed arrested and beaten, and he will carry his own cross, his implement of his own death, up on Golgotha, and there he will be crucified, and he will die, and he will be buried. And yet on the third day, our glorious faith tells us that Jesus rose on that first Easter. He burst the bonds of sin and the devil and death itself forever and ever. And there's a contrast here. The contrast is that this little girl, though Jesus raises her from the grave, will die again. She is raised from the dead to have a second death. But when Jesus rises from the dead on the third day, he will never die again, because he hasn't just temporarily reversed the power of death. He has conquered death itself. And all who put their faith in Jesus Christ on that great, final, glorious day, when Jesus returns and the trump sounds and the angels of God accompany Christ on the clouds of glory, that the graves will open and we shall be resurrected, not to die again like the little girl, but to live forever and ever in a new heavens and a new earth. Because Jesus Christ is the resurrection and he is the life eternal. Great story. Great, great miracle and mighty work by Jesus. And let us not forget, however, and we'll just say a little about this woman. She's great. We love this story. She's been afflicted with her flow of blood for 12 years. Another of the Gospels says she's lost all her money from doctors who could not help her, but she just believes that if she can touch the hem of Jesus' garment, that Jesus will powerfully heal her of her affliction. She has faith in Jesus, faith that he is able, and she believes that he wills and wants to do it. And he does it. And Jesus encourages her faith. Woman, your faith in me has made you well. Jesus wants to encourage your faith today. So take that word of encouragement. Even if you've been suffering chronically, this is a chronic illness. 12 years long this lady's been carrying this thing around, and nevertheless, she is healed by Jesus. So if you're carrying chronic pain or chronic illness with you, this woman's faith is an example that Jesus honors and rejoices in. Don't lose your faith. Jesus is with you, and Jesus cares for you, and Jesus will provide for you as well. And that's good news. Good news in the midst of chronic illness, and good news that the dead raiser will come on that great final day to give us life eternal. And that's Spotlight Good News. Thanks so much for joining us, and we will see you next time.